Did you know that there are some education savings plans that aren't everything that they seem to be? On today's episode, we're going to be diving into making the most out of your children's education savings so that you can set them up for a solid future. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Heart-Centered Money Conversations, a series for financial wellness. I'm Laura Plahuta, an emotional clearing practitioner and energetic alignment coach, and this is my amazing friend, Kristen Mabee, who is a financial coach here in Ontario. And so, like I said, today we are going to be diving into children's education savings. So if that's something you're into, then stick with us. And last episode, we actually covered all about life insurance. So if that's something that you're looking to dive into, then go check that episode out as well. And before we dive into it, just a little disclaimer that this is everything that we share in here is strictly for education and not advice. So always do your own research. Take everything that we share in these episodes, filter it through everything that you're already. And then the whole intention of this is so that you can really make some educated decisions for you and your family's financial future. So without further ado, Kristen, you can take it away.
Awesome. Okay, education savings is a big one. So I think education savings is something that I'm going to say most parents want to do for their children, even whether they're going to go to school or not. This is one of the biggest questions I get is, what if my child doesn't go to school? We're going to cover that. But we hope, the best for our children to have a life that's better than ours, right? That's always what we want for them. So this is a great way is savings for your children's education. So when that time comes, they're set up for success. But there's two different kinds of different education savings plans that you can get. I'm going to kind of deep dive and explain the difference between both of them today. And I like to use the Ontario Securities Commission's PDF where it talks all about these two different plans. So it's an unbiased opinion. It's Ontario Securities Commission. So it kind of just say, this is what it is and this is what it's not. And I love that. I'm also going to link it below if you want to check it out for yourself. They have it broken down really easy. You can even follow along. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about this. So before I dive into the two different kinds, let's talk about the bonds and the grants. Because everyone's like, why don't I just put my money into a tax-free savings account to save for my child's education? And the reason is because you can get free money. Who doesn't want some free money, right? So let's look at the bonds and the grants. So bonds are money the government puts in based off of your income. You can check out on the government website to see what income you need to have. Again, I'll link it below for you. So how it works is the first year that you open your RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan, they will put in $500 in if you're eligible for it and $100 a year after that till your child is 17 years old, up for a total of $2,000. So there's that part, which is great because you don't have to put anything in yourself. So sometimes I recommend just open the account, see if you're eligible for it. If you're not, what do you got to lose, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great way to, get some money that can grow. Say you get $500 in there and you let that grow for the next 17 years, at 9%. I don't have that number handy, but we can run it for you. So, but it's gonna grow, and that's gonna be free money that your children can get. I think, Laura, we did run that number before. Do you remember what it was?
I don't.
No, I feel like it was a few $1,000s. It's not crazy, but it's still a few
Better
thousand
than
dollars
nothing.
that you didn't have before, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So the next one is the grants. So grants are based off of how much money you put into the RESP. So you can put in $2,500 per child per year into your RESP. The government gives you 20%. So if you max out the amount that they allow is 2,500, that means that you put in 2,500 and they'll put in $500 for each child. So if you have 3 children, $7,500 that you can put in. We're going to talk about individual versus a family plan as well. And so for the group plan, for the grants, getting myself all sidetracked. For the grants, it's a lifetime of $7,200 that you can get in government grants. So just between the bonds and the grants, if you're eligible, it's over $9,000 that you can get. So I know education is very expensive, but something is better than nothing. Like I'll take 100% of free money. Like just
Totally.
send it my way. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you combine it with all of the other strategies you've already given us in this series, people have no reason to not be
Right?
doing amazingly financially.
Yeah. Honestly, like there's so many nuggets in the series.
So many.
So, okay, so we're gonna look at the two options. You're like, Kristen, what are the two options? So the first one is it's with a scholarship trust company. Sometimes they call it a group plan. I'm not gonna name companies. You can Google it for yourself. And the other one is more for traditional RESP. So you could get it at the bank or you can get it with an independent company like myself, that kind of idea. But it's just an RESP, plain and simple. So again, I know Laura said it, but today we're all here for education and not advice. But let's dive in. So how does a scholarship trust work? So these actually, Laura, before I dive in, can you share with us when you had Lily, what was the package you got from the hospital about education savings?
Yeah, I actually threw it out, but I pulled it back up before we before we started this episode. So it's called the newborn bundle, and they give you this in Ontario with 5 different steps kind of to get your child registered and all of the things. So as you register the child's birth, you register for their birth certificate, you get their social insurance number, and then you sign up for the Canada Child Benefit to see if you qualify for that. And then the 5th one is about registered education savings plan. So they give you a little drop down for where you would like information from. And the options they gave was like the bank and then the scholarship trust. And then they also gave the other one, which I was surprised with, was Wealth Simple for these.
Very surprising.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was surprised by that, but
So how it works is like you click scholarship trust is they'll call you and they'll tell you about why it's an amazing program. Today I'm going to give you the facts and you take it for what it is. So they'll call you, they're set up on this list, right? So it's really interesting. Laura actually got a lot of information because you wanted to learn about it, right? And so here are some of the things. So with a scholarship trust, it's a legally binding contract that you're tied into until your child is done school. So it's not until they start school and you can just take that money out and pay for their education. It's until they're done school. So they need to know like what program, how long, these different things. The challenge with these programs is there's a lot of costs associated with it. So typically I've seen people paying about $1,000 in fees. So say you're putting $100 a month into the plan, the first $1,000 of that, so the first 10 months is just paying a fee, right? And you're losing the growth on all that money, right? So, and that's what it was that the lady told you, right?
Yeah.
So that's challenges. So in the it's OSC, Ontario Securities Commission, they say there's enrollment fees, administration fees, investment management fees, depository fees, and trustee fees. It's a heck of a lot of fees, right? So there's that one-time setup fee, and then there's fees yearly as well, from what I've seen in my experience. The other thing is like when you're investing in general, the investments are in what we call fixed income. So there's fixed income and equities when you're investing. Fixed income is more secure. It's like bonds, GICs, cash is considered a fixed income. They're more secure, but they don't necessarily give you the advantage to get a higher return. Equities is things like stocks, mutual funds, things along those lines. Mutual funds can have fixed income in them, but for example, equity is more the growth portion. So in these, in general, they're only in the fixed income that don't necessarily give you the returns that you could potentially get from stocks, right? But they don't fluctuate as much as stocks either. So there's disadvantages and advantages.
Yeah. One of the things
So
that she kind of lost me on as well was when she mentioned about the one that stays the same, was she shared how it was so amazing that it was run by BlackRock, who manages trillions and trillions of dollars, and it was so impressive. And if you don't know who BlackRock is, I'm sure you can Google it, but it's not really companies and things that are doing very good things for the world. from what I know. So I was like, that was kind of like a red flag for me where I was like, nope, that's not where I want my money to go.
Yeah.
I got
And
that.
that's the thing is like knowing the research and like your values, which we talked a
Exactly.
lot about as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with this, you make your own investment decisions. So they're like, here's X amount of options, and you just check one. It's kind of like when you're in a group RSP plan. They're like, here's the booklet, pick one. Like, there's no one advising you on what's gonna work for your family, right? So there's that as well. So the one thing that really gets me though is that your contributions are made on a schedule. So you're saying, I'm going to commit to making $100 a month payment towards my child's education plan. For example, I'm sure you can kind of work out like whatever number that is for you. But the challenge is that you're on a contract. So if you miss a payment, like if you were to miss a car payment, there's a penalty, right? And it's the same thing with this. So you basically you have to make sure that you're staying on this contract. If you have a tough time and you can't make that payment, there's likely going to be implications. So one, you might get interest, there might be additional fees, and if you miss a bunch of payments, they could terminate it as well because it's a contract, right? So that's one of the challenges. Withdrawals also can have restrictions on how often they happen and how much you can take out when you are withdrawing that. So you want to just know how it works, like with any legal contract. And then say you wanted to cancel your contract. I think you have 60 days to cancel with no penalties, but then after that, maybe it's 90 days. I would check again. It's in this brochure. So after that, though, you basically get back your contributions less any fees. So what it says, this Ontario Securities Commission brochure says the money that you get back is always less than what you put in. How is that
Mm-hmm.
a good investment?
That really makes sense.
I'm just saying. So these are some of the things. And then okay, here's the question you've all been waiting for is if my child doesn't go to school, what happens, right? So if your child doesn't go to school, you can lose the growth of what you've earned, or you can transfer it to an RESP, depending on the an RRSP, a registered retirement savings plan, depending on the type of plan. So scholarship trust, they do have an individual and a group plan, but majority of the time what I see is the group plan where you have a lot more restrictions. So they basically bundle a whole bunch of people together, right? So it's more restrictive than a traditional RESP, a registered education savings plan. And so that's kind of like the basics. The biggest ones I'm just gonna like reiterate is it's a contract. There's fees. If you miss payments, you have to be really careful, and there's can be challenges with canceling it. So just really do your research. Now I want to talk more about traditional RESP, right? So that's what I deal with. So a traditional RESP has a lot more flexibility. So the biggest flexibility is that you have more options where you can invest in. I like to use mutual funds. So you can have a portion of fixed income and stocks. So say you're like, I want a balanced portfolio, maybe I want a little bit more growth, but and still some fixed income, or you're like, my child is 14 days old. I have tons of time. I want it to be all equities. I want it to grow more because she has so much time. You have that flexibility to make educated decisions. Or maybe you have it growth for a period of time and then you say, she's going to school in the next 5 years. Let's switch. Let's have more fixed income. I want it to be more secure now. And you can work with an advisor who can help you kind of along the way of deciding what's going to work well. Because like what Laura is invested in might not work well for somebody else, but that's what works well for her, right? But if you don't have an advisor to help you with that, it's hard to know like what are all these fancy names? What's an ESG? What's a what is this? But so you want to be able to have somebody that can help you out if possible. So the other thing that you want to look at is that the difference between having a schedule to put your money in, you have you can put your money in however you want. I have some clients who do it weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Other clients that have lump payments, they do it at Christmas and on the kids' birthdays, lump sums, right? They can do it monthly, and then they say, you know, things are really tough right now, can we stop? Or, you know, things are really well, can we increase it? Right? They have all that flexibility that they can deal with, you know, how do I want to put the money into this account? If they miss a payment, we're not like, oh my God, sorry, there's all these fees. It's like, okay, no worries, we'll just catch the next one. Right? There's a lot of your own, what works best for your family, I'll say, right? So the difference between, Laura had asked me a really good question about like, what's the difference between working with like more of an independent company or like a financial services company versus a bank, right? And in my experience, the difference is that we're able to get higher returns. Again, in general, do your research, okay? But in my experience, like I've been able to help my clients get a stronger return without taking on more risk. And it's because it's professional portfolio managers and it's specifically geared towards your situation. So there's a lot of different factors where, you know, with the banks, typically most banks, and again, not everyone, but most banks have 5 different mutual funds that they'll put you in. It's like an income portfolio, conservative, moderate, growth, and maybe an aggressive, right? But typically, even in the growth portfolio, the growth rate of return that I see at the bank is not necessarily as strong as the return that I see the growth portfolio that I like to use, that I personally have my money in, right? So that's the difference, because I get that question a lot too.
Yeah.
So okay, so the other thing is, what are the fees like, Kristen? You don't work for free. No, I don't. Right? So the fees are the same as any other registered account, like a tax-free savings or an RESP. Sometimes you'll see it named management expense ratio. Basically, it gets paid to the advisor, the mutual fund company, the dealer, which is like the company that I work for. There's obviously people that have to do a lot of work to make sure that your money can have a strong return, right? But the returns that we show are after, like net of all those fees. Where in the other one, like you have all those fees before you even see any returns, which is crazy. And the fees are typically less, right? So again, it depends on your advisor. I don't charge any upfront fees. Some advisors do charge upfront fees. Upfront fees.
Your tongue twister.
Yeah.
Say that 5 times fast.
So yeah, so you just have to know, because sometimes I see, you know, people do comparisons with me. They don't even realize that they're paying a lot of fees on their RSPs or tax-free savings. That's like a whole nother conversation, but here we are. So that's kind of what it looks like in terms of fees. You can withdraw at any time. You don't have as many restrictions as with the scholarship trust. And then again, what if my child doesn't go to school? So what happens is the government takes back the grants and the bonds. Just fair. The grants and bonds were meant for if your child goes to school, but they don't go to school, they're like, well, I'm taking them back. But you still get the growth on all the grants and the bonds over that time period, right? So you get some growth whether your child goes to school or not. So that's why I'm like, just open the account, see what happens. Right? So there's that portion as well. And then obviously you get your own money back. So you can transfer that money into a registered retirement savings plan to avoid taxes, or you can take it out as cash, but then you pay taxes. So there's different options, but the government intends it to be for, you know, a child's education. They expect that they'll get some kind of taxes off of it. That's why they do it this way. Because even if you transfer it to our RSP retirement plan, is they know that you're going to pay taxes when eventually you do take that out, right? So registered accounts, there's taxes. We don't avoid it, but we avoid as much as possible. And that's like knowing the ins and outs.
I have a question about that, Kristen. So you mentioned and when you take it out in cash, you pay taxes, and then when you put into the RRSP, you basically pay taxes when it's coming out. from my understanding, it's like you want to take that money out. You're obviously it's under your child's name, so your child's not making a lot of income, so the tax bracket would be very low, correct?
Yeah, so that's it brings up a good point. So if you're taking it out, this is I'd like to fact check it. I know for sure if you're taking it out when your child is in school, it gets taken out at your child's tax bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're taking it out for school purposes. So that's one of the advantages of an RESP is it's very low or there's no taxes on it. But if you're taking it out because you need to use it, say there was an emergency and you need to take out cash, I'm pretty sure that's at your tax bracket because it's not being used for the child necessarily. Like maybe you are using it for your child for their purposes. They're like, it's not being used for what it is. So
Right. And so that's
if
why
you,
with the cash, you get taxed on it as well, because it's technically the adult, the parent that's taking it out because it was their
yeah,
investment. And that's why they're
yeah.
taxed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you put it in an RSP, yes, you're taxed on it later, but it might maybe you take out less portions so you're not getting taxed as much. Like say you had 60 grand saved right now for a child's education and you want to take it out as cash, they're gonna count 60 grand towards your income and you're getting taxed on that whole 60 grand. Whereas if you put it in, you're getting a strategy from me, you're lucky. Whereas if you put it into an RSP, for example, and you take out 10 grand a year for 6 years, you're going to pay less taxes because you're taking it out in smaller chunks,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah, I hope
Gotcha.
that answers that question.
It did, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, so then there's family plans and individual plans. So with family plans, you can put all of your children into one RESP essentially. So if you have three, today's the day. Okay, if you have 3 kids, you can put them all into one plan. And it's called a family plan. So the grants all go into one spot and you can put money in, here or there. It doesn't say, oh, I'm putting in a lump sum and then that lump sum is going towards Sally. It's like that lump sum is going into the account. It's like a
Oh,
mixed
okay.
basket. Where if you have an individual account, this account is specifically for Sally. Joe has his own account. Mary has their own account, kind of idea, right? So it's a little bit more challenging because I've seen parents really struggle with this because their older child has more and they're trying to all in one. There's an advantage of what if one child doesn't go to school? Well, the other children can still use that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge advantage of a family plan is you don't necessarily have to work as you don't have to be as stressed about it, right? Like these plans aren't here to like stress you out and, try to make things complicated. They can be complicated, but this is why we're doing this, so you can understand, right? So this is the advantage with a family plan is that if one child doesn't go to school, the other children can still use that money. And that's what I like about the family plans. So this is a little bit a lot, I guess, about the RESPs, the difference between the scholarship trust and a traditional RESP, a registered education savings plan, a little bit about the grants and the bonds. So there's all these different factors, but really understand what you're getting. If you are getting a discount on your education savings, it's probably a scholarship trust. So just knowing what that looks like, because I've had people say that to me, they're like, oh, but we're getting a discount. I'm like, you shouldn't get a discount because there shouldn't be any additional fees to get discounts on,
Mm-hmm.
right? In my opinion, like I said, I personally like the RDSPs.
Yeah.
So my homework for you today is really to check out the Ontario Securities Commission's brochure. It's a PDF. It's not very long. It's really easy to go through. They've really broken things down so it's easy to manage. And then check out how the grants and the bonds work. Again, the government website is pretty good at breaking it down to say, for the bonds, your income has to be this. For the grants, this is how it works, this percentage. So that's what my homework is for you if you're looking into these RESPs. Of course, as always, if you need some help, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to give some free advice and just help guide you in the right direction. Laura, do you have any questions or anything to add about education savings? I know you've been through all of this already, so.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think just like really encouraging anybody to just really educate yourself. Like I went on that call with the scholarship lady and I was on there for 2 hours asking her questions. Like it was a lot longer than what she had anticipated because normally it's just education and people don't really ask questions because I feel like, and even me in the past, like I would just like trust like the bank, or I would just kind of like they were the experts, where it's like really like lately I've been really taking things into my own hands to really want to educate myself and learn, which does take more time. Like you really have to
Yeah.
clear space in your days to be able to start learning this stuff. But I feel like it's like I feel so much more confident in being able to make the decisions for my future. And then I don't have anybody else to blame, right? But
Yeah.
it's really like I just get to kind of like have more say and understand kind of what I'm doing and not just blindly throw my trust into random people. So I really appreciate what you do because I've learned so much through the education. And like, I don't even just like, I'm not even just like, yeah, Kristen, that sounds great. Let's do it. Thank you for educating me. I'm like, no, like I still want to go learn more.
Yeah.
And then I have actually came back to Kristen and been like, yeah, let's do this because what you say makes sense to me. And after
Mm.
doing everything else too, like it's the best route that I've found. So I'm excited that other people are now having access to you through this series. And
Yeah.
yeah, just do all your research, do everything. And then I also love too how like you had shared about like reassessing things down the road because things change. We go through
Yeah.
many different periods and transitions in our lives. And I feel like having somebody there that's going to be like managing it and taking a peek at it instead of just like throwing it into my bank account and leaving it and hoping that it's going to do something amazing.
Yeah.
Like being able to have somebody
Yeah.
there is just so valuable. So I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on here. I hope that those listening find a lot of value out of this episode as well. And I hope that they reach out to you to be able to kind of like see what is best for them.
Thank you. It means a lot to me. And I feel like obviously I've been in my career for a while and I feel like I hear this more and more because I do really focus on the education side. And that's why I was so eager to do this series. I actually had a client reach out to me last month, not last month, last week, sorry. And her parents are selling their house. And she was asking them all these questions. They're like, I don't know. They asked her, where did you learn all this? And I had met her parents, but they weren't open at the time. And that's okay. Not everyone's open. And she told them that she learned it from me. And now they're like, okay, we need a Kristen because
Totally.
their investments weren't doing what they needed to do and just all these different things that weren't working well. And so I agree, like I really do focus on the education because if you can't make educated decisions about your finances and just taking the trust in one person that you're like, hopefully my advisor does what's right. It's like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I've seen all the time where advisors haven't done what's right and taken advantage of people. And it's like really sad, but it happened to my family. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. So
Sure, yeah.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm really happy to be here and just giving everything I got because you deserve like the listeners here, like you deserve to know about finances and have it broken down in a simple way that's going to work well for your families. So
Yeah. And one of the things too, we wanted to create a safe space to ask questions. So I literally ask a billion questions, guys. So feel free to put all of your questions down there. If something doesn't make sense, that's okay. We weren't taught any of this stuff. So feel free to put your
yeah,
questions in. There's no silly questions and just like have them answered. And then you can ask more questions if they come up as well. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody that's on here. And we're very, very grateful that you're here with us on this series. And if you do want to go check out any of the past episodes, feel free. And the next one we have coming up is all about wills, which I'm going to be diving into as well here shortly, which my life has changed. So that's something that I'm looking into as well. So I just love that all of the different pieces we get to kind of implement in all different types, all different situations and times in our lives. So if that's something
Yeah.
that you don't have or you're wanting to kind of reassess what your will is looking like, then that may be an episode for you as well. But anything else, Kristen?
Awesome. No, I think that's everything. Feel into your heart about your finances, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take
Amazing.
care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Kristen.